I don't know if I'm gonna make this like a series or whatever it may be, but I'm gonna talk about some topics that I think we neglect. We don't talk about it enough. And in the midst of like everything happening and this and that, I think sometimes we forget what's really going on. So I'm gonna break it down, maybe video by video, but I'm gonna start with this one first because I think this one's probably the most obvious, and yet we live as though it's not the case. Like, we live as though it's just something that's normal in society, and that's a concept of riba. Okay, so before I start, I am in this society and I struggle just as much as everyone else as we integrate into society, break through. We haven't figured this out, which is why I'm bringing the discussion. And I think these are important discussions because we can talk to the government, we can go to this person, that person, we can blame this person. But the truth is, it starts with us. So if we change certain things within us and we implement it, we share it with others share it as well, it's a domino effect. And my big thing right now is I really want people to be more aware. It doesn't have to be a point where fully there, because this is life, this is dunya. Dunya will always have problems. There's always going to be things that are going to happen. But if you stay aware and you understand these things, I think we can definitely thrive. And this is the concept of riba. So if you don't know what riba is or what it is, it's basically, interest, credit cards, banks, mortgages, car loans, all these things that incur interest. It's not just whether it incurs interest or not. What it is, for example, you get like a car payment which says, 0% interest, right? Or you're buying a new phone and it says lease it or pay for it within 24 months, right? And it says pay this amount every single month. What the concept of it is not the fact that it's a 0% interest. It's the fact that if you miss the payment, always look at what happens after if you miss the payment, not what happens now. Like, for example, I give $30 to someone, right? I say, okay, I'll lend you $30. I'll say, pay me $30 back. But if you don't pay me back, then you gotta pay me $1 every single month. Every single month you gotta pay me $1. So think about it this way. Now that this is just like an extreme example, but $30, $1 every single time. I'm incurring, right? To the point where that person is so in a hole that they paid me more than I've lent them. Like that point, they're pretty much my slave at this point. Like, they're pretty much working for me. And I've had student loans, I've had credit card debt. I've had this stuff. I know that feeling I get when I fall into debt, which is why I don't understand the concept of why someone would want to borrow money from someone with the intention of not paying it back. Like, that's one of the dumbest things I've seen. Because if you pass away with debt, and this is something that we should really, really keep in our heads, if we pass away with debt, we're not only affecting ourselves. We think, some people may think, it's over, it's done. No, it's not over, because your own family will be affected by it. That debt that you have, your family, they won't be obligated to pay it off, of course, but it will go on them. So we need to be more aware of this. So when you get that new car, you're like, oh yeah, this is great, I'm getting that new car. But you're paying monthly payments, and then okay, cool, there's no interest on it, right? For example. But you don't know what's gonna happen 6 months down the line. This is what happens with debt, with especially riba. Okay, the difference between buying something without the riba versus something with the riba is when you buy it without the interest. Like, just say there's no interest, no nothing, this and that. You pay it off, right? If you miss the payment, you figure out a payment plan. That's how you figure it out. So if there's no penalty if you miss a payment, but that is on you. Like, you're still in debt. You have to figure out the payment plan, figure it out with whoever you're in debt with. But when it comes to riba, if you miss the payment, it's not just if you miss the payment. I'm just speaking of if you miss the payment. But there's also credit cards where if you're paying off the credit card, you're paying the bare minimum. Some credit card companies, they'll 15%, 20%. it can get high. So think about it this way: you have $1,000 and you decide, oh, you know what, I want some new furniture. $1,000, okay? It doesn't. It's whatever. I have a credit card. Why not? If you don't pay the full thing, like for the full $1,000, and this is what happens to a lot of people, they think, oh, you know what? They look at their statement. They say, oh, pay this month this much by this month. Okay. If you don't pay the full payment, there's gonna be interest. So, for example, if the minimum is, I don't know, for example, $40, right? You're still gonna be charged on that interest for the rest of the amount. So $1,000, if it's 15%, that's $150 a month. In 10 months, you're paying $1,500. Now, of course, you will eventually pay it off, and that happens. But what happens to a lot of people is they fall into this rabbit hole, or they get stuck into it, and then they get stuck, and then they get 30K in debt. And that's just a thing that happens in this society. It's so easy to fall into debt for all of us, myself included. It's so easy because of all this materialistic things and everything that happens. It's so easy to fall into debt. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I'm seeing people protest, I'm seeing this and that, but you look at what some people may have, or if you have discussions with them, you know that they have pretty heavy debts. You can say free this person, but you yourself, you're not free. So where's the correlation? I don't want to say that person doesn't have the self-discipline, but that person, if they can't figure out their own debts, you know, it starts with us. We need to get away from Riba. We need to figure out the proper way to do this. I don't know what it is, Islamic banking, whatever it may be, but these are conversations that we need to have. I don't know why we're not having these conversations. We're seeing people, oh, I'm condemning this, I'm condemning that, I'm condemning that. What's that gonna do? Like, honestly, what is condemning? What's condemning gonna do? What's the talk gonna do? We need to have real discussions. We need to have real time discussions. How can we improve the state of the ummah? How can we eliminate riba from the societies? How can we figure out all these addictions, or how can we help the youth? How can we figure out solutions? How can we figure out the school situation with everything that they're teaching us in these schools, in the system that they're trying to ingrain in everybody? These are real conversations we should be having, and we're not having these conversations. We may be having them, but a lot of us are just turning a blind eye. We're like, oh, you know what? This is, or we have this mindset of, oh, what can I do? Or, you know, we're pretty much keyboard warriors. But the thing is that we need to have these are the conversations that we should have. How do we combat this? How do we combat that? How do we combat this? How do we combat that? We need to think outside the box. We need to think bigger. And one of the biggest things, I think, this is just my personal opinion, if we want to thrive, if we want to succeed, we need to figure out how to get riba out of the society for us and for the future. That's my big thing right now, is figuring out how can we eliminate riba for us, at least as an ummah. We take riba like it's something like it's like we need it, right? Which is why there's so many times where people they feel stuck, they can't do anything, not because it's a limited belief, this and that. No, it's because they're just stuck. They're one payment away from incurring interest. And this is where we need to have better financial literacy. I've been studying this for the last couple of years, financial literacy, and it's something that the more I'm learning, the more I'm realizing, why aren't we learning this? Why aren't we teaching people how to manage $100? Why aren't we teaching people how to manage $1,000? Why aren't we teaching people what really happens when you fall into debt? Why are we teaching this? Why are we normalizing student loans that incurs interest? Why are we normalizing mortgages? Why are we normalizing car payment? And you know, why is it that when someone doesn't have a car, we look down on them because they don't have a car, or they don't have their own place, therefore we look down on them? Maybe there's a reason why. Maybe that person just doesn't want to incur riba, interest. And like, once we get this out of our system, we can finally think properly, and we can actually figure out the next solution. And until then, we're gonna be stuck in this hole, in this rabbit hole. And I'm sure, I don't know if you are in debt, maybe you're not, and if you're not, great, I love that. There's a lot of people that are stuck, and I feel obligated to talk about this. So this time I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to talk about certain things that I think we need to have discussions. And I think for me personally, the biggest discussion I want to have is how do we eliminate riba from the society? This is probably not going to get any reach simply because I don't have a big reach. I don't have a big audience. But I hope someone with a big reach can maybe take the inspiration and share it with the people, because I'm just a regular dude. I do my thing, I live my life, and I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna raise awareness. I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm not gonna stop, but it needs to be discussed. We need to have real conversation. We can say free this, free that, free this, free that, but until we need to take the action. We need to do something. We can't rely on the government. The government's not gonna do nothing. Like you can talk to the government all you want. If worst case scenario, you go into government, you run. Why don't you be a part of it instead of saying, oh, let's reach out to them? Yeah, reach out to them. That's great. I'm not against that, but why don't we do it? Like, why don't we just take the matters in our own hands and just start? And I think the first thing we do is we start with eliminating riba. And I can say that for my own personal life, when I had student loans, I mean, I had a plan, I had an action plan, but I just remember feeling trapped. And anytime I fall into maybe some credit card, whatever it may be, like even though if I ever do, I pay it off like pretty much right away, or I have the money, I can afford what I can afford it, which is fine. But even me, like, I don't even know, why do I have a credit score? I should be cutting my credit. Like, I don't need it. If I can't afford it, I don't buy it. That's all how I've always been. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. I know it's a long video. It's a little bit of a different type of video, but I want to have these conversations. And if nobody's going to watch this, great. That's great. But I'm going to push to have these conversations, because I think these are the real solutions. We can protest, we can do this, everyone has their own role. As I said in a previous video, we all have our own roles. However, we need to also think smart. We need to think calculated, and we need to have action plans. And if we're going to thrive, then we need to outsmart. Like, we can do it. We can outsmart the society. So that's my personal thing. I'm gonna keep pushing for it. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. You guys let me know your thoughts. Share it with someone that you like, and I'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget to stay authentic.